This session we're going to talk about actually writing the VSL and ways to make it a success. All right? And really the secret is twofold. The first part is that if you use the process that you learned in your 4 homework assignments, okay, you use that process on 2 or 3 jobs, it'll be amazing to you. Pretty soon you'll be able to look at a product and literally within seconds you'll be able to answer almost all of the questions that you had to answer in that preparatory work about the prospect, about the product, about the benefits, okay, about the themes that you could use to promote it. All of that stuff will become second nature to you. And literally right now, I mean, I don't have to do any of that process, but I wanted to walk you through it because once you get it, you will be able to look at a product and within seconds or at the most minutes be able to accurately answer most of those questions. Some of the answers are intuitive, some of them will be based on your experience of answering them before. But so use that process, not just for VSLs, but also for regular copy, and you'll find that having that information up front really speeds the process. Having it at your fingertips, you don't have to go looking for it. You don't have to get halfway through your project and say, what premium am I going to offer? Well, you lose a day trying to figure that one out, you know, during the writing process, which means you're going to lose a lot of momentum in writing. So the second thing is to have a great outline. And so we're going to talk a little bit about that now. The process really is create the outline, hang some meat on the outline, and then turn it into copy, right? It's very simple. If you do that, you'll never start with a blank page. You know, you begin with those 4 lessons, the things we talked about, the prospect, the product, the benefits, the themes. Okay, you start with that, then you lay out your outline. Here's the things I have to say based on my theme, based on my product, and all of those things. These are the points I have to cover. Then you can start hanging meat on it. I mean, when do you ever see a blank page at that point? You don't. Okay. So step 1, begin with the outline. Okay. Now, on a lot of the pieces that I saw, I had the same crit. Very simple formula, works every time. Tell them what you're going to tell them. Tell them, and then tell them what you told them. Okay? At the beginning of a VSL, it's very important to tell them what you're going to tell them, because your early copy is dedicated to selling them on watching the entire VSL right to the end. Okay, how do you do that? You do that by telling them the benefits of watching this. In this video, I'm going to give you, I'm going to show you, I'm going to demonstrate. You know, you will discover in this video. So tell them what you're going to tell them. During that process, I call that my 3 T's. You know, tell them what you're going to tell them, and tell them what you told them. During that process, it's a really good idea to have a key piece of information that you're going to hold until the end of the VSL. Okay? So in the financial field, for example, it might be all about China. You know, VSL might all be about China. But in the introductory copy, I make it very clear that at the end of this presentation, I'm going to name 3 investments that will at least double your money as this China situation continues. So now if they want that information, they have to stick. Okay? And also during the process, during the actual copywriting, you return to that statement several times. You continually remind them that they need to stay with you because, you know, after all, they've invested this much time and they're almost to the free information that you're going to give them at the end. Yes?
Can it be something other than free information, Clayton, like, or maybe a bonus download or
yes.
something like that?
Yes. Well, a bonus download would be information, but yeah, it could be. I've used discounts, you know, but I don't call them discounts. I call it, you know, your $1,000 reward for watching this video. You know, that's another thing that I've seen in some of the copy I've reviewed. You don't want them to see you coming. You're driving them to this video because of their own self-interest. So, you know, because they're going to get something of value by watching it. They're not coming to buy a product. And so if you reveal that you're pitching something or selling something at the beginning of the video, you're going to lose a lot of people. It needs to be all about the prospect, all about giving him this valuable information, all about your passion for him, your compassion for him, your desire for him that's higher than his own desire for himself. And be that person as you're leading him into this VSL and as you're leading him through it. Okay? It's only at the end, after you fully dimensionalize the problem or the opportunity, that you present the solution in the form of your premium or your product. Okay? So we call that premature cellulation when people mention the product up front. Okay? Premature cellulation. So you tell them what you're going to tell them, introduce and credentialize your spokesperson. We all worked on that, right? Present and dimensionalize the problem or the opportunity. Now, as a general rule, the problem will get more viewership than an opportunity. I've found that combining the two works very well. But the old maxim is true. People will spend more money and give more time to avoid a crisis or to solve a current problem than they will to reach for a future achievement or to fulfill a desire. But when you can combine the two, okay, the problem is hair loss, okay, that's a current problem, okay, then if, and the people will respond to that. If you go to them and say, don't lose any more hair, nobody cares, right? So if you can combine, the negative will always win, almost always, in almost every case. However, if you want to take a positive tack, just make sure there's an or else part of it, okay? In other words, you can make all this money with these investments, but if you don't, these other things will happen. This particular, it works really well with the inflation argument. You know, you can either sit there and take it, you know, while the government destroys the value of your money, or you can use this trend to grow rich. So there you have the kind of the dual benefit. Present and sell your solution, and that's what we're all about. We're not great writers. We're great salespeople. And what we do is not art. It's science. It's based on testing, and it's based on what works. Okay? Make your offer, ask for the sale, restate your main theme, solution, and offer, ask for the sale again, and close. And when you're asking for the sale, tell them exactly what to do. Don't assume that they know, just because there's a button there that says order now, that they need to click it. You know? Tell them what you need them to do. Click the button or call toll-free such and such, and place your order. Okay? Then tell them what's going to happen when they click that button, or when they call the number. So it's not this unknown void that somehow we're going to, you know, do something illegal, immoral, or fattening to them. We're just not going to do that. You're going to go to a page where you get to make your final decision. You know, I like to say you don't even have to make your final decision now. Just click the Order Now button, and you'll go to a page where you can select your options or you can finalize your purchase. So, okay, so that's the basic outline, okay? Now you can start hanging meat on that, okay? Now this is before you begin writing. This is part of the research process. For each item in your outline, ask yourself, what breadcrumbs do I need to drop, you know, or to get people to come to this conclusion, and or to add dimension to this item. So in other words, what kind of research, what kind of third-party sources, what charts, what graphs, what quotes, okay, what studies were done if it's a health product. And I was talking about that with somebody today, and National Institutes of Health site, for example. If you want to research anything at all, you can go there, and there's a list of all the JAMA and New England Journal of Medicine articles and all that kind of stuff. So nothing you ever say, no claim you ever make, needs to go unsubstantiated. I don't care how credible your spokesperson is. That's certainly helpful. But you don't just simply make flat statements and walk away from them and assume everyone's going to believe you.
What's that site again?
Our National Institutes of Health. It's a government agency, and they have this massive database of health reports, studies, and so forth. So instead of saying, I don't know what, some drug causes sterility, you know, you can go cite a study where the Mayo Clinic says it did. I used to love finding studies where Harvard said that a particular nutrient could do certain things, shrink a prostate, or whatever the topic was. Once you say that, you've validated your spokesperson's credibility because he knows the studies, but plus you have the credibility that the Mayo Clinic or Harvard or whatever. Yes?
Another way to do it could be taking actual stories,
yes.
testimonials, and telling the story.
Yes, testimonials and case histories are great. And they're particularly wonderful in VSLs because you can have somebody read it other than the spokesperson. So it sounds like the actual person who had the experience is giving you that reading. And it's legal. I mean, we've run this through the lawyers. They're just fine with it. There are some lawyers that will want some little disclaimer someplace, and we'll talk about that. But we usually have a terms and condition window below our video, I mean way below it, and with a scroll bar. And so you can put anything that you want to clarify any legal point in there. And lawyers seem to be fine with that, so that's cool. Next, what proof elements do I need to make this point irrefutable? Now, the key to any good direct response copy is to make point number one, and it's absolute to a point where the prospect cannot not believe it. Okay? Drive it absolutely home. Make it part of his belief system. Now, you can do too much of that, obviously, but almost nobody ever does. It's like there are more people that will just drop a fact and then go on to the next fact, and they have lost the reader or the viewer at that point. He doesn't believe you anymore. So you cite the study, you show the fact, you show the chart, tables, quotes, whatever, and third-party information, of course, is always the best to drive that point home. I make a list of what is like my dream substantiation for every major point in my VSL, okay? And then I go find it. And I'm a little spoiled. I've got a whole research department that exists only to find this stuff for me. So I just have to do a research report. I need a chart that shows this. I need a graph that shows this. I need a table that shows that. And they'll go get it for me. But, it wasn't always that way. And in the old days, I had to go find it myself. But that's part of the fun. Now you've got a completed outline, and you've got a bunch of meat on the bone. You've got all this research and substantiation. And during that process of adding the research and substantiation, you will you'll have ideas. Stuff will come to you. And you'll find stuff. You'll find facts that you didn't expect to find. It may add whole new dimensions to your copy, to your script. And you just plug it all into the right buckets here. Yes?
Question. In Gary Pennsylvania, is that how you say it?
Yeah, Pennsylvania.
One of the things that he talks about that we all miss as a copywriter is probing for the question of ideally what the buyer is wanting.
Yes.
In a face-to-face sale, if you're going to sell a car, I can ask you those questions and kind of lead you down the right path.
Right.
So in this format, when would we use that?
That's part of that first process I was talking about that we've covered in our first 4 homework assignments. And that's where we identify who the prospect is, what are his fears, what are his frustrations, what are his desires. And in that assignment, I think in the video that goes with it, I talk about several different ways that you can do that. Plus there's an article on how to crawl inside your prospect's skin that I wrote years ago that is still very, very pertinent. But there are different processes. I think it was Paris that whenever he had to write a health package for old people, he would go to an old folks home and sit down with those people. They loved having a company. And you spend an afternoon just start talking to them about stuff that related to the package he was writing. Talking to Dan Rosenthal would talk to total strangers on the street. He'd walk up to them and he'd say, "Look, I have this page. Would you read it and tell me what you think?" And they would do it. And he liked the opinion of non-copywriters and non-marketers better than any of us. He didn't care what we thought. He wanted to go out on the street and see what total strangers thought, because he knew we were looking for certain devices, certain techniques, certain things in the copy. So that's another way to do it. Another way to do it that I talk about in that article is method acting. I mean, I do this a lot. I mean, you don't have to be a rocket science or a brain surgeon to figure out that older people are worried about dying, or that they're plagued by arthritis, or that they're worried if they'll ever be able to perform again. You know, and if you just close your eyes and see yourself in that position, you're going to get some good insights there too.
But so do you ask this question throughout the? So a better question is, throughout the sales video, are we always asking that question, say 5 or 7 times?
No, not necessarily. I mean, first of all, you can answer the question without asking it. In other words, you keep in mind what the prospect is thinking. Again, fears, frustrations, desires. Those are the active emotions, okay? So what are those in your prospect? And then make sure your copy addresses those. You don't have to go back and ask the question each time. But when you're talking about a disease state, and you've identified frustration that the drugs he takes for that only make him sicker, you know, with other symptoms, and you realize that, then as you're writing the copy, that becomes a section, okay? Does that make sense? Okay. There are a lot of times when you're writing that the worst thing you could do is actually raise a question, because the questions are unanswerable. So if you just give the answer without raising the question, the copy gets stronger, right? So I hope it helps. If not, just grab me later.
The question, just whatever the general census is about that.
Yeah. There are a lot of ways to do it. There's something called the SRDS, okay? And you can go to it's called the Standard Rate and Data Service. And they have it for direct mail lists as well as for email lists and other media. And you can go to that, and you can look up all of the competitors of the company you're writing for as well as the company itself. And it'll have a list of demographic information about the customers who bought products from that company, okay? It'll tell you how old they are, what sex they are, tell you how much education they have, you know, everything that they can possibly come up with. Plus, it'll tell you what other products, it will often tell you, not always, but tell you what other products they bought in the past, so you can really get some good insights there. SRDS? SRDS, Standard Rate and Data Service. And it's very expensive, but you can go to the library and check it out for nothing. Okay, now when you're writing your VSL, it's important to remember that you're not just making one sale. Okay, you're not just selling a product. Before you can get there, first you have to sell your prospect on giving you his attention. Right? So the first of all, your traffic driver will do that, but also the first part of your script, as we just talked about, you know, by saying, in this video you will discover. You're bribing him to watch your video by promising to give him something of value. Whether it's informational, whether it's his $1,000 reward for watching, you know, whatever it is, okay? So you have to sell him on giving you his attention. And you can do that in those ways, or you can do it simply by getting in the boat with him and empathizing with whatever problem it is that he's worried about, okay? Or presenting the benefit that you're going to deliver, like we saw in the Mark Skousen piece, okay? The bullet train one. The viewership sale, the attention sale, just say, hey, look at me. Okay, that's like your headline. Okay, let's think about this as if it were a direct mail piece, right? Why do we have headlines? Headlines grab people's attention. That's how the big type, the colored type, it gets people's attention, right? The headline could say free sex, you know, and it says, now that I have your attention, and you could go into something else. I mean, that will work, but the function of the headline is to get attention, period, right? The next cell is to read the deck. Okay, why would I read the large copy that goes directly under the headline? Well, there's got to be something in there that draws me in. And the copy gets progressively smaller, you know, and before I know it, I'm in the body copy of the piece. Okay, that's the rationale for direct mail, for print ads, okay? You do the same thing with your video sales letter. You know, you have your big hook, your title, right? Then you have your deck copy that explains and expands the title a little bit. Then you have your opening copy that tells them what they're about to get in this video sales letter. So that's, I'm selling you on giving me your viewership. Then there's a credibility sale. This is another way to say what I said in the video from the boot camp. The credibility sale is where you tell me why I should believe anything you have to say. I may not know it for sure, but I'm pretty sure you're going to go ahead and try to sell me something. So why should I give you your attention? Why should I believe anything you say? You obviously have a dog in this fight. You want me to buy something. So right away, anything you say is suspect. So how do I know that you're being honest with me? How do I know you're credentialized? How do I know that you know what you're talking about? And that's where you present your spokesperson. Hi, my name is Fred, and I'm a doctor at the Mayo Clinic, and I invented the Heimlich maneuver or whatever. Okay. Then you have the problem or opportunity sale. Now, this item D, as I said earlier, it could be either or both. Okay. It could be this horrible thing that's going to happen to you if you don't take certain actions now. It can be this wonderful thing that will happen to you if you do take the prescribed action now, or some combination of the two. Then there's the solution sale. You convince this guy that there is a problem or a huge opportunity. So now what do you do? Well, you have to be the guy that's going to give him the solution. And typically, that solution, if you're selling a periodical, usually that solution will be the premium or the main free gift he gets. So you don't even still have to mention a product. Okay? I want to give you this free because I don't want you to have to go through this. Because I don't want you to be ripped off by doctors. Or I don't want you to miss this great opportunity in the stock market. So I would just want you to have it free, no cost. So then you sell that premium as if it was your product. Tell him all the reasons why you might as well just, dry up and disappear if he doesn't get this premium. Right? Then at that point, after you've sold that lead premium, the transition is very simple. You say, here's how you can get this free. Here's how you can get it. It will cost you nothing. Right? And that's where you finally introduce your real product. I want you to have it when you accept a risk-free trial of my product. And get risk-free in there up front as soon as you mention the product. Now you have to sell the value of the product. You have to demonstrate why this product is worth hundreds or thousands of dollars. And as he's getting this copy, he's got this tension rising in him. I really want this, but God, it's got to be really expensive because look at all the stuff it does. Okay? That's the feeling you want him to have as you're going through that value sale. Okay? Then you relieve that tension by giving him the price. And typically you'll start with the nominal price. We did this in the homework assignments. You start with the nominal price, then you tell him the discount, and you give him a rationale for a discount. Then you tell him how many dollars he saves and how many % off it is. It's a very simple progression. Yes?
Clayton, are there any times when you don't sell the premium, but you do sell the product?
Yes. However, in the periodical sales, it's very difficult. And the reason for that is I can't tell you what's going to be in the newsletter next month. Right? So how am I going to sell something as amorphous as that? Right? But with a premium, I can tell you exactly what's in that premium. And I can sell the fire out of it. Does that make sense?
Yeah. If you were doing something more like selling a service, which has a real good premium too with it, it's like a how-to manual, but the actual product is the service.
Well, I really, in a very real way, periodicals are services. Or let me say it this way. We have front-end, back-end services or products in the financial industry, right? Front-end product typically is a $49 newsletter. Once you bought that newsletter, you'll be offered the opportunity to buy a trading service that will cost you $1,500 a year. Okay? Sometimes we just go and sell the service. We try to make sure the service is juicy enough on its own that we can just sell it without any additional premiums. The manual that goes with it, I've offered that as a premium sometimes. But there's a bit of a credibility gap there. And the manual isn't going to be much good for you if you don't get the service. So it doesn't really have any intrinsic value of its own. Does that make sense? So basically at this point, it's all about building value in. And a couple of the scripts I saw today, that was one of my crits. There was a book that was selling for $19, and I said, you're leaving some money on the table there. $49 for cold list, $49 should work really well. I think we need to add stuff to this offer to make it, maybe do the book on CD, maybe, I don't know, turn it into a course. But we need to add some value here so that we can get our price up. And part of that was adding premiums to it. So, but really the two main things, uses of premiums or free gifts. Number one, add value to the offer. Okay, you're getting $300 worth of stuff for $49, And second, in situations where you cannot adequately describe what the product is going to deliver because you don't know what the guy's going to be writing about next month, the premium is a great way to get an order. And you do run the risk that people will subscribe to get the premium and then cancel. And our cancels run about 6%. So it's not huge. Next is a safety sale. That's just your guarantee. And we talked about that in our homework assignments too, the various types of guarantees. So you guys are all over that. Then the next one is a convenience sale. And this kind of ties into telling them what's going to happen when they push the button. Let them know it really is as easy as clicking that button. There's nothing else going to happen. You go straight to this page where we'll tell you, give you an opportunity to make your choices. At one point I wrote this page. I was just having fun with it. And it was for one of my own products, so I could get away with it without a client interfering. So I said, look, I know what you're doing. You're sitting there at your computer. You're looking at your screen. Your right hand is on your mouse. And your finger is poised right over that button. Click it. Couldn't be much easier than that, right? So sell the convenience of it, how easy it is to do this. And then the do it now sale. That's the urgency motivator that we were talking about in the homework assignments. We can't really ever forget that. And of course the next step after they click that button is a bump, and we'll talk about that later. Okay, your biggest enemy on VSLs is page abandonment. Your second biggest enemy is shopping cart abandonment, but that's true everywhere online. So as you're planning your VSL, as you're writing it, think about how you can keep people with you. Now, promising that great piece of information at the end of the VSL is a great way to do that, okay? But there are other ways to do it too. One is to constantly circle back and remind them of what's coming next. And then what you all seen as you've watched these videos, when you try to escape them, is that once we create the video, we turn that transcript into a static sales page. And so if you click, I want out of here, you get a little pop-up that says, do you want to stay on this page or leave it? And it's referring to the static sales page at that point. So if they click stay, now they're looking at your transcript, and we get about 15% of our total revenues from that static sales page. So it's very important to have that backup. And we'll cover more of that tomorrow too. I made a big point of this in the homework assignments. There are two major things. And I promised to tell you about, one, and then another part I promised to tell you about two essential components that your page has to have. The first one is credibility. We know how the web is. That dumb commercial where the guy's programming a wreck with his little app, and the girl comes out and says, you can believe everything you see on the internet, it's all true. It wouldn't be on there if it wasn't true. And then the fat guy walks up and she goes, oh, he's a French model, I met him on the internet. So we all are skeptical of what is said on the internet. So anything that you do on your page to hurt your own credibility is just, it's sabotaging your own effort. So again, document your spokesperson's credibility beyond a shadow of a doubt. Substantiate every fact you present. Frequently acknowledge and empathize with the prospect's incredulity. If you watched End of America or any of mine, my SMR sales pages, you'll have noticed that frequently throughout the page we'll say, I know that sounds crazy, but, and then we present a piece of proof that would absolutely nail down that fact that we just told you. There are so many fun ways to do it. I know what you're thinking. You're thinking that's insane, but look at this. And you're writing as if you were talking one-on-one with a person across the desk from you. So, you know, those kinds of phrases really work. You know, write in a friendly voice. You don't want the guy with a big deep voice. You don't want the woman with the polished speaking voice. That's great because it'll save your client or you, if you're producing it, a lot of money in terms of the vocal talent. You can have your wife or your mother or your husband or your son or whoever's around that's age and sex appropriate to do the script, or of course, you know, the credible spokesperson that we were talking about. And then we talked about in your homework digging up every testimony. Yes.
Do you have any input on having the spokesperson be the narrator versus a third-party narrator in terms of conversion?
No.
Okay.
But we've done it several different ways, but we never did A/B tests on it. So, you know, I don't want to mislead you there. Usually, as I said in the homework assignment, you're going to be best off if you go with the editor or creator of the product as your main spokesperson. Now, that doesn't mean that you can't have somebody else do the introduction or have that spokesperson pass the ball to somebody and say, you know, to another expert, you know, somebody else that people will respect. So you can do that too. But, okay, in the old days, in the health market, I'll never forget this. Wendy and I launched the first alternative health newsletter, Health and Healing. It was back in like 1990 or something, maybe 89. And we had it, I mean, as a copywriter, I hope this happens to every one of you, okay? You write some copy, you send it off. It takes them 2 months to finally print the damn thing and mail it, right? Then you get a phone call, and the phone call says, we've got so many orders, we've added 2 new shifts in our money counting room. Okay? And so, you know, what are we going to do? You know, we've just upped our mailing quantities. The biggest quantity Phillips had ever mailed at that point for a financial letter was maybe 500,000 pieces at a time. They're mailing 3, 4, 5 million pieces a month of my package. Wendy was a marketing director. Okay? It's the best thing that can happen to you as a copywriter, especially if you work on royalty. So where was I going with that? Oh, in the health industry, the very next project they gave me to write. Now, we've found this new market. Nobody else knows we found this market. We have the market cornered. We're going to make millions, right? So these geniuses that had come up with the first idea came up with the extension of the idea and say, okay, well, we found this guy. His name is Earl Mindell, and he's a pharmacist, and he is really into natural health, and you know he'll be really great. So we're going to do a newsletter with this guy. It bombed. Why? Because pharmacists aren't doctors. In the prospect's mind, it was all about the credibility of that MD, you know. And then we tried another one with a naturopathic doctor, okay? So it was Marcus Lowe, ND. And our prospect says, ND, not a doctor. It bombed too, okay? It wasn't until we came back around and got Stephen Sinatra and what's her name, Chris Northrup, other MDs, that we got back our momentum on that. It's all about credibility.
So if your expert is not very good at narrating the sales letter, can you just hire professional voice talent to say, I'm John from so-and-so? Have you run that past your legal team?
No. I haven't. And I think it's less a legal issue than it is kind of an ethical issue in terms of your client, what he'll do and what he won't do. My main client, Weiss Research, would never go for it. They're very, very careful about it. Because if it ever comes out that that's not really the guy, you know, it could really hurt you. So they avoid that kind of stuff. Yes?
I have a question about testimonials.
Yes.
The package that I'm doing on spec for a vitamin company, they don't keep any of their testimonials. So I know, right? I heard that and I'm like, oh, I think there's some work I could do there.
Yes.
If I can talk him into it. I mean, if he doesn't go for it, that's fine. But the question is, there are some great testimonials online, including places like Amazon. Can I use those if they come from competitors' products? No.
I don't think so. No, I mean, it depends on the nature of the testimonial, I guess. The question was, she has a client that never keeps testimonials. You know, customers call in and say, wow, I love this stuff. You know, it cures the blind, it raises the dead. And they just don't care. They don't keep testimonials. So
It's not that they don't care. They're scared of the FDA.
Ah, okay. Well, they don't understand that the FDA doesn't care. It's the Federal Trade Commission that cares. And they have given very clear guidelines in terms of the kind of disclaimer that you have to run if you're using testimonials. And so, you know, you can still use them. You just have to use certain disclaimers that say, these results are not typical, your results may vary, that kind of thing. So and again, this gets back to every client you work with has a different ambulance chaser, right? And each one of them has a different opinion on the law because the regulations are specifically written so that any of these agencies can nail your butt anytime they feel like it, no matter how careful you are, okay? And Bob and I had that with Garino, remember? And so, you know, they're specifically written so they have ultimate power over you. If they don't like you, they can, you know. Now, as copywriters, you're kind of protected. You know, I told the story earlier how one of my clients went away for 20 years and they didn't even so much call me. So as copywriters, you're protected. But your client is going to be very sensitive to these regulations. And one lawyer will just say, and this is, in my way of thinking, idiotic, will be so strict that it'll almost kill the company, you know? And but the reason it's crazy is he's doing it in the pursuit of an impossible goal, which is to guarantee there will never be an action by a regulator, right? On the other hand, some companies, and I see these guys on TV all the time making claims that cannot possibly be proven, and those guys are going to go to jail. I mean, sooner or later. I think some of the male potency products and extension products and, you know, all that kind of stuff. You know, those guys are making claims that cannot be substantiated, and the FDA has a way of just kind of coasting for a while and then rounding them all up, you know. So all that just to say that there's a wide gulf from client to client in terms of what their standards are in terms of trying to meet these regulations, and you just basically need to ask, and the client will tell you. On testimonials, so the question was, my client doesn't have testimonials, so can I go to a competitor's website and use those testimonials? And the answer is probably not. Now, the one exception would be if the testimonial was about a substance and not a product, okay? So if the testimonial was about saw palmetto, you know, did this for me, okay? Without citing the product, you might be able to get away with that. But again, the legal beagles will ultimately make that decision. But can your client be talked into keeping testimonials or doing a testimonial acquisition campaign?
To be seen.
Yeah. We will offer a premium of some kind to the entire file, some kind of digital report, PDF, ebook, to the entire file. Tell us about your experience with X product, or tell us about your experience with our company. How are we doing? You know, and to thank you for your participation, we will give you this free book. What you can't do is say, the best testimonial gets a free trip to Hawaii. You can't do that. But you can say, we just want to thank you for taking the time to answer this question by giving you this free ebook.
Can I state something on the testimonials in
Sure.
the health industry? One of the big fears in that whole industry that really clear a lot of things up for a lot of people that are working in that is about 2 years ago, somewhere in that range, I don't remember, Congress redefined what disease is. And now disease, as far as Congress is concerned, is that which is cured or addressed or treated by a pharmaceutical. It's no longer a process, but it's something that's cured by a pharmaceutical.
Yeah.
And what the real big fear in the whole industry is that somebody tags a disease process to a nutrient, it gets under congressional regulations and all that. So as long as your testimonials and everything else avoids that issue, you guys are all clear. You're fine.
Yeah, right. And also, you know, the using a disease name can get you. I don't want to spend too much time on this now because we're not lawyers, but and your clients will give you guidance here. But a lot of times a disease name turns out to be the problem. So you can say it supports a healthy liver, supports healthy eyesight, supports healthy this, healthy that, right? And then the disclaimer that the lawyers will put on it will be something like, this product's not meant to treat, diagnose, or prevent any disease. And so that'll be in 6-point type someplace in your terms and conditions. Credentialize everything. Okay, don't assume they're going to believe anything that you have to say. To quickly double or even triple results, always include plenty of these 3 elements. Human interest stories, case histories kind of thing. Value-added content, stuff that rewards people for watching your video, usually in the form of information. Entertainment value. And it doesn't have to be dancing girls. Yes. I wish it was dancing girls, but go ahead.
The question I have is regarding spokesperson.
Yes.
If you find a celebrity spokesperson that is in alignment with your premise, but it's a service that you provide, wouldn't you be better off with you as the spokesman since you're providing the service, or would you still go with the spokesperson who has a similar way of thinking?
You know, there's no way to answer that question, I don't think, because it is on a case-by-case basis. I'll give you an example. I did a website for the Libertarian Party a few years back. And, you know, Penn and Teller, the comedy team? Well, Penn is a hair-on-fire libertarian. I think they both are, okay? But they absolutely, and they will endorse libertarian principles, but they would not endorse the party for donation purposes. So, you know, A, it depends on the product. B, it depends on the celebrity you're going after. I mean, there are celebrities and there are celebrities, you know. There's Kim Kardashian and then there's Barack Obama, I guess, for most people, for the majority. So, you know, depends on the credibility and how well it ties to your product, and you just have to answer that on a case-by-case basis. I'm sorry, I can't give you a better answer on that, but that's really the case. But on the entertainment value, it doesn't have to be big laughs and, you know, belly laughs and that kind of stuff. It's just something to break it, you know, break the monotony, break the one voice speaking to me. It could be something as simple as an animated chart now and then. It could be another voice reading testimonials. It could be, and we've done this a lot. We call it B-roll. It's just some video that you buy on the web, or even capture somewhere on the web that isn't copyrighted, that you drop that supports the copy in your VSL, and you drop that in. It could be just photographs. We've tried whiteboard. In our market, it doesn't work. You've seen the whiteboard presentations that people are using these days. Guys talking and another guy's drawing at kind of high speed, illustrating what's being said. Doesn't work in a financial field, or didn't work in the financial field for us. But it's working, it's doing gangbusters for my buddy Rich Sheffrin. So, you know, depends on the market you're in. I think it would work well. It's very populist, so I think it might work really well in the health area. The thing is, though, that you will have to pay to hire the people who do that, and they can be pretty expensive. So it's a little bit of a risk, and I would rather see you do a regular PowerPoint, and then once it's a winner, then say, here's some things we should test. And there is a company that told us, you know, if we test it and it doesn't lift response, we don't have to pay. So, you know, those deals are out there, and you can find them. So many of the pieces that I see are talking about America, or those people, you know, that have some disease, or those investors who made big mistakes in the housing bust, or just other people, you know. Your video isn't about other people. Your video is about your viewer. And so what you need to be doing is personalizing those things, you know. If you're one of the 200 million Americans who blah, 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 or if you're feeling frustrated or angry over this, blah, 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 blah. So bring it right down to the guy who's watching it. Talk to him, okay? It's got to be one person talking to one person. It's not we talking to one guy. It's not me talking to a group of people. It's one guy talking to one guy. Personalized process. It has a side benefit of beginning the bonding process with a customer, okay? Because we've had a one-on-one conversation. This is just us girls. So your page needs to be about what frustrates him, what he desires, and what he fears, okay? And as long as you're talking about his favorite person, you got it, okay? Okay, these are, we call them just for fun, persuasion strategies. This is just a fun little thing that you can do. It's a nice way of approaching making your points, persuading people of things. Okay, you begin with a mutually agreed upon fact, something that everybody knows is true, something that's just beyond question. The Fed has printed nearly $2 trillion since 2007 and is still printing $85 billion new dollars every month. It's a fact. Okay? Then you move on to the commonly held belief. Gold prices always soar when the government prints money. You would have to prove that. Okay? Now, it's already commonly held, as a belief, but you need to prove it. You need to show back in history. Look, in 1974, the government started printing money like crazy. Look what happened by 1980. We had 18%, 18% inflation momentarily and 21% interest rates. This is what happens when the government prints money. So, inescapable conclusion then, gold prices will continue to skyrocket as far as the eye can see. Right? All right, here's another way to do it. You start with a provable fact instead of something that's, everyone knows. And you prove it. When gold prices rise, gold stocks skyrocket in value. And you can show historically how that has happened. Here's a period of rising gold prices. Here's what happened to Newmont Mining. Here's what happened to, Glamis. Here's what happened to all of these other gold companies. Provable fact number 2, gold stocks that meet my criteria rise faster than ordinary stocks. Again, you can prove that with data from the guy's track record. Inescapable conclusion, my gold stocks could make you X% richer in 2013. So this is another way of creating your persuasion. Okay, avoiding deadliest sin, boredom. Your prospect can shut you down with a single twitch of his trigger finger. He doesn't have to be bored for more than a few seconds. So this gets back to a big part of doing your script is reading it aloud. Maybe record, you can get Audacity. It's a free little program that lets you record from your computer. Record yourself reading the script and then play it back. And when your eyes start crossing and your head starts nodding and your mind starts wandering, make the note. That's the point in the script. You need to tighten up or you need to do something. And then do the same thing, for other people. Have them listen to you reading it or have them read it themselves. Again, keep it lively, entertaining, focused on him. Be careful, and I do this all the time. This is one of my biggest failings. I fall in love with my subjects. Okay, so if I'm writing about finance or a particular kind of investment, or I'm writing about a particular supplement, I do all the research and I just fall in love with it. And I find this research is so fascinating that does absolutely nothing to advance my case, but it's just interesting. So I want to include it. And pretty soon I have a 2-hour-long VSL full of stuff that people don't really care about, right? So, make sure that you have to have just enough technical details, just enough interesting stuff about, the product or the condition or whatever in there to keep people viewing, but be sensitive to going over on that, falling in love with your subject. It's easy to do. Okay, and we talked about adding visual interest. Confusion kills response. One of the biggest crits that you can get is, this confuses me. The crits that Michael Masterson talks about that he uses all the time are confusing, unbelievable, and boring. Okay? When you're creating your own copy, think of those 3 things as you're going through. Is this confusing? No. Is it boring? No. Is it unbelievable? Okay? And if the answer is yes to any one of those questions, you've got work to do in that section. Write in short sentences that contain a single thought. No run-on sentences. As we talked about earlier, try to keep your average word length short. Don't feel that's a stricture that's going to just really make it impossible to write the copy. If you want, if when you're doing your first draft you're using bigger words, fine. But at some of your editing passes, go back through and say, how can I say this more clearly? How can I say it with shorter words? How can I say it with fewer words? I never used to do this with the in other words thing in direct mail, but in video it works really well. Repetition is good to a certain point. So if you're making a particular point, you can make it one way, and then you can say, in other words, and make it another way. And the repetition is good, plus it gives you an opportunity to drive a point home for people who might not have gotten it the first time. These are just all little fun techniques that can help really vitalize your page. I think this is really big in the health industry, using illustrations to demonstrate complex processes. I had a direct mail package. The headline was, it was about oral chelation, and the headline was, the 23 cent heart cure the cardiologists don't want you to know about. And the entire package was full of Gray's Anatomy illustrations that showed the disease process, how an artery gets clogged. And we showed a baby's artery, and then we showed an artery of somebody at 18, and it's already starting to clog. Okay, and then we showed, the plaque building up until at 80, he's got like 15%, flow through on his artery. Then we showed, and that was on page like 2, okay, where we have that, we're showing that process. And then on the very next page, we showed the reverse of that process. What happens with oral chelation? The rogue calcium is removed from the plaque breaks, is dissolved in the artery, and over time, this is what the artery looks like. And because we used illustrations that looked like they came out of Gray's Anatomy, they had tremendous credibility with the people who saw it. We mailed 60 million pieces of that package. So it was wildly successful. So to the degree that you can get away with addressing these things, okay, you can certainly describe the process of developing achy joints. The lawyer may not allow you to say arthritis, but you can say, here's why your joints ache, and you can show that process, okay? And then later you can show how the vitamin or supplement, whatever it is, product, okay, lubricates the joints or does whatever. You can't say it cures arthritis, but you can talk about how it supports healthy joints, okay? Don't forget to add the phone when you're adding your buy button below your video window. We get probably, now we sell high-priced products, $1,500 a pop to our house file, but I'd say we get 15 to 20% of our orders over the phone. I'm guessing that it'd probably be in that area. So make sure that there's that you don't tell them, look, we don't want your money unless you order online. Give them an opportunity to order by phone. A lot of people are just afraid of giving out the credit card online. Tell people, I've touched on this before, what will happen when they click the button, so they won't be paranoid about it. And we talked about this too. Again, listening to your inner voices is what it's all about. And you get sensitive to that when you're listening to your own page, but also when you're listening to other people's pages. And that'll give you a real good opportunity to maybe say, hey, I can beat your sales page. Just give me a shot at it. Just an aside, cool idea, okay? I was doing one of my reviews today, and I said, this is outstanding copy. And the guy goes, well, here's what I did. I went to this guy I wanted to write for, and he's got a successful static sales page online. And I made a deal with him. And I love this deal. He said, I made a deal with him that I will take that sales page and use it as the foundation for a video sales letter. Okay? So now all he's doing is converting a static sales page with some changes into a video sales page with the client's full permission to use his existing control copy. How brilliant is that, right? We already know the copy works, now, and we know that VSLs pull 2 to 3 to 4 times better than static. So this guy's going to make some money. So I had to know how much. I said, well, what's the deal? How much are you going to get for this? The answer was 7% of the gross. Okay? Not 10% of the increase, 7% of the gross. They're going to be paying him on people who buy and then cancel, you know. So, wow, you know, how many of you guys could do that? And how much would that ease this entire process for you? I just thought that was brilliant. I had to share it with you. Huh?
Is it ethical in terms of the other copywriter?
Well, that's up to the client. The client has to make sure that other writer's taken care of. Yeah, because it's his copy. And the client will do that because the last thing you want to do is tick off a good copywriter. You know? So, and I just very quickly, I had a situation where I wrote a promotion for a particular client, and this was health, and the doctor approved it. No problem, love it. We mailed, I don't remember the quantity, Wendy would remember, but it was like 100,000 pieces. It was the first test. And the thing pulled 4%. So it was like, wow. You know, it was the kind of thing where you need 3 shifts just to count the money, okay? And so I'm sitting there going, we're going to do 6 million of these every month, and I'm going to get my royalty, and here's how much money we're going to make on this. Well, the doctor, some friend of the doctor's saw the promotion, and she's at a cocktail party, and this friend is, you know, criticizing the promotion, making fun of her for this promotion. Next morning, we get a call, says, you can't mail it anymore. Whereupon I called the president of the company, and I said, you owe me money. I gave you a 4% package, and you would have mailed probably 30 million of those this year, and so I figure you owe me the money. You either mail the package or you pay me. He said, Clayton, we're going to pay you. Okay? That's how valuable you are to these people as copywriters. You know, that's the weight that you carry, right? So they would rather lose money and keep a good copywriter happy, you know, than, you know, so this is good, okay? This is very practical stuff. Clients are going to give you different kinds of crits on your package. They'll either identify a problem that really exists and offer you a great solution. You love that when it happens, okay? Even though it means you have to go back and, you know, do a little bit more work, it's great when that happens because it means more money to you, like Marcella said. They'll correctly identify a problem and offer an absolutely pathetic solution, okay? And so in that case, it's a real problem. So you come up with a better solution. That's how you address that crit, okay? Third, they'll identify a non-existent problem, and my client does this all the time. Non-existent problem in the copy. But the solution that they offer will strengthen the copy anyway. Again, you love that. That's wonderful. And then finally, the only one where I basically will fight to the last breath is D. The identify a non-existent problem and give you a solution that will kill the copy. And that's the one where you dig in your heels, you know. And I usually don't lose those because eventually the client will come around. But let's face it, you know, evaluation of copy is opinion, okay? And opinions are like noses, you know. Everyone's got one. So, you know, the only one that you really need to fight, though, is that last one. And sometimes you'll lose, but more often than not, you'll probably win. Okay, you're going to have to come to a point when you get to your final draft where you're going to have to look at running time. And shorter is typically better up to a point. I wouldn't want to see a 7-minute VSL necessarily, especially if I'm selling to cold lists. But my VSLs run usually 40 minutes to an hour and 10 minutes at the longest. And we're kind of moving down to the shorter part of that, shorter side of that right now. So if you're cutting copy for time, and I think you should go through the process on your final draft or near your final draft anywhere, where you look at the copy and you say, how much of this is dead wood? How much of this don't I have to say in order to get the sale? Okay? And so that, you know, that's just simple efficiency. You should do that. Okay? But if you're going to cut for time, just for time, think of your sales page in 2 parts. Everything that happens before the order button shows up, everything that happens after the order button shows up. Now, you don't care how long that copy runs after the order button shows up. It could run for 3 days, okay? You've done your work to sell the product. before it showed up. You presented your offer, the button shows up, okay? Now, if that happens at 20 minutes, that's wonderful. Now, that can stay on the screen for another 2 hours. I don't care. You know? So I don't worry about cutting the copy that shows up after the order button, okay? I make my initial cuts in the completed script, you know, just by reading, but you will not know where it drags until you hear it recorded by your talent, not just by you. And so I make cuts 2 ways. First, I do it in my completed script. Secondly, I do it by getting a transcript of the raw recording, and going back in and redlining it, taking out any sections that turned out to be a little bit dead. This was great, okay? I told the story of how Sheffrin called me up and he says, you got to try a VSL. And I said, yeah. And so a couple of months later, he calls up and says, hey, have you tried the VSL yet? And I said, no, we haven't, because I don't think it'll work for our market. And he goes, well, that's too bad, because Agora listened to me, and they actually did one, and they're just knocking it out of the park. And I said, we're doing a VSL. So it's okay to be stupid once, but not twice in a row, you know, like that. So naturally, we were emulating Agora, so I wanted to watch their order page, and I mean their VSL, and really analyze what they were doing and how they were doing it. And one thing I noticed was that the order button, the thing was 1 hour and 6 minutes long. The order button showed up at about an hour and 3 minutes in. There was no way to order the daggum product. You couldn't speed up the video. There was just no way to do it. But that was orthodoxy at that point. That was like the Holy Grail, a holy script. Anything I did would have been heresy, you know, to not do it that way. So our very first out of the box, we put the order button way into the script. It was probably an hour in. But it was grating on me. Well, we got a success with it. So now we're not just on our own file, we're going outside lists like crazy. We're buying television time. It was great. But the whole time, it's a stone in my shoe. It was bothering me. It makes no sense to have the order button that late in the thing. So I'm going to test it. So I moved the order button up as far as I possibly could in the thing without, you know, messing the script up. And I got an 80% lift. I almost doubled my response. Okay, and how we did that was, remember the outline. You present your problem. You spokesman moved on. Present your problem. Then you present your premium or your product, right? In my case, premium. And then I said, I want to send you this free book, okay, to help you through this crisis. And then I would say, but more on that in a minute. First, and I presented my offer. This book is free, you know, if you try my newsletter, okay? Then I presented, then I talked about, at that point, I presented the offer, and the order button comes up, okay? And then from there, I went back to the premium and sold the hell out of the premium, you know, really made them want it. And then came back to the product again, really sold the hell out of the product. So by doing it that way, I was able to move the order button way up in the script, and it almost doubled the response. So,
what one was that?
Excuse me?
What offer was that?
That was Safe Money Report, and it was the American Apocalypse video. And I don't know which link you have, whether it's to the early order button or the late one, but it's both of them are still online.
Hang on, huh?
When you put in the order button, do you leave it then all the way to the end, or
Yes.
do you take it out and then put another one in the end, or you leave it all in?
No, once it comes in, and we'll talk about that, about the actual page that your video lives on in another session. But yeah, once the order button shows up, it's there forever. Never make it hard for anyone to order, you know.
Clayton, where did you introduce that? How far down in the script?
I'd say I moved it up by 20 minutes. It was probably at about an hour, and I moved it back to about 35 minutes, something like that. I'm guessing. I don't remember exactly, but it was somewhere in there. But just my point here is just by juggling it. Normally, you would say problem, solution is a premium. You get it free with the newsletter. here's the offer on the newsletter, you know, the solution is premium, long copy about how great that premium is, all the things it'll do for you. Then you present the newsletter, you get it free with the newsletter, and a long copy about the newsletter. Then you present your offer, and you present your 1 and 2 year, I mean, my God, we're talking about forever. Then your order button comes up. And by doing it this way, you just say, I want to give you this free guide to get you through this crisis, and it's yours free with a subscription to Safe Money Report, and I'm cutting the heck out of our price, and here's your offer. Now let me tell you about your free gift. Okay? So you can handle all that in a half a page, and you've got your order button up, and now you can take days to talk about your free gift and your product. Okay? And again, it was like 86%. Yeah.
What about soft offer versus hard offer and the problem of cancellations? Do you have any meaning a provisional test of the newsletter?
Testing soft offers. We haven't done that. It's a good idea. One thing that we are doing is we're serializing, and we'll get into this in an upcoming session. And this came from the Motley Fool, the Gardner brothers. They have this irrational fear of long copy. And so the people that work for them just roll their eyes. And you know, we have these publisher meetings where I meet with Motley Fool and Jim Cramer's company and all these people, you know, this year it was in Austin. And they just roll their eyes and say, oh, Gardner brothers, you know, we can't do long copy. So they've taken to serializing their video sales page. And so instead of one video sales page, you're signing up for a 3-part course, maybe in options trading, right? And so each one is short, maybe 15, 20 minutes.
It's a mini product launch in effect?
Yeah. Well, kind of. Product launches work great. I mean, the full Jeff Walker kind of product launch works wonderful on house files because you can go to those people all day long, right? On the web, when you're going to external files, it's a little more problematic. But with this, what they do is, if it's a course, I've got to have your email address in order to send you tomorrow's installment and the next day's. So there's a squeeze page involved, right? So that, you know, free options trading course win 8 out of every 10 trades. I think Marcella wrote it. Sounds good to me. Free trading course, great. I love options. Click the button, you go to this little squeeze page. Says, you know, we need to send you the link to the video, and also you'll get continuing updates in their newsletter. So you're opting into their e-zine. So now you have permission to email those people until hell won't have it. And so then each day you drive them to the next module of the course, and each module ends with a pitch for the product. And there's typically, and this is product launch concept applied to external lists. Each day you make the point that the discounts that are available right now will disappear. They'll be gone with the wind when the last module is presented. So you have an urgency motivator that's particularly powerful. It's just one of the other strategies for using VSLs. So, and I hear it works great. We're testing it right now. We did a course on a product called Inflation Survival Strategy. And it worked quite well to our list. And so now we're trying it on the outside on a payment plan basis. So we'll see. My timing sucks sometimes.
I just wanted to follow up with one. I've had some clients where I've tried to talk them into just so that you're not even selling, you're just giving them a free 3-month trial subscription, and but it does automatically convert to a hard subscription right after 3 months. And a lot of people complain about, well, but we get a high cancellation rate with that. So I would really rather have a hard offer up front than having this, nothing but giving kind of approach.
Try this, okay? This is brilliant. I'm also testing it right now. I wish it was my idea, but it wasn't, so I can say it's brilliant. Okay, do a paid trial. And the way you do that is I've got 10 premium services that sell for an average of $1,500 a piece. So that's $15,000 worth of product. And that's not a BS price. That's the lowest price anybody ever paid for these services. Those were the launch prices, not the nominal prices. So $15,000 package of products. And there's 3 print newsletters in there that only sell for 49 bucks. And then there's all of these more expensive products. So I'm going to offer you the opportunity to buy these products for $39 for 1 month. You can test drive all of these products for $39 for 1 month. Well, that 39 bucks is going to pretty much break me even on the cost of media, if not immediately, fairly soon. But then here's the deal. It's a negative option offer. So the way the deal works is you pay me 39 bucks, you get all of these services that people paid $15,000 to get for a full month. And at the end of the month, if you don't want them, just call us up and we'll just, you owe nothing, okay? If you do want them, if you do want them, do nothing, and then it'll convert to like 500 bucks a month or something like that to get all of these services. If you do want them. If you don't want them, you got to call us and tell us not to do that. Well, so they call up and they say, okay, well, I just don't think it's worth 500 bucks a month. I think I'm going to pass. So the customer service people are then scripted to downsell them. Well, what did you like? Right? And so they're going, well, at the very least, I liked all those print newsletters. Well, good. Well, if you take Real Wealth, it's 49 bucks. If you take Real Wealth and SMR, you get Safe Money Report. You get 20% off. If you take all 3, you get 30% off. And then they do the same thing with the higher price services. Now, 30 days later, you're collecting money like crazy. And it was Zacks that invented that approach. That's Zacks Investment Service. So. Okay, any other questions? Yes?
There's a little something that you said that I didn't understand. Your friend went to a website that already had copy that was selling well.
Yes.
And said, I'm going to convert it to VSL for you, and used the same wording as the website already had.
Much of it.
But he doesn't do the production, so what did he actually do for his
Well, what he's doing is turning it from a static sales page that people can scroll through to a video sales letter that does all the things that we talked about you have to do in a linear format. Like, for example, at the very beginning of the thing, telling people what you're going to tell them. Introducing your spokesperson, credentializing them, where to put the order buttons. In a static sales page, your order button appears several places on the page. Video sales pages, it's different. So his task is to take proven copy and turn it into a video sales letter. That's it. And as I said before, it's perfectly ethical so long as the client continues to pay the royalty to the original writer, right? And then he's paying this guy 7%. I think it's brilliant. Video sales letters are different in key respects. The linearity, okay, the order in which you need to do things in order to keep the person with you. The options that you have in terms of B-roll video, animated charts and those kinds of things that add power to your presentation. And I think most important is that video is an emotional medium. So you have the opportunity to show pictures or video or whatever that really engage people's emotions. I don't know when I said it last, but I say it all the time, so I'll say it again. There was a woman from Young and Rubicon, a great advertising agency, and she said, nobody needs any of the stuff we sell. All they need is a cave, a fire, and a recently deceased squirrel. That's all you need, And what we sell, everything we do, is we're selling emotional gratification. I don't need a Rolex watch. I don't need a car with 662 horsepower, but I got them, okay? Why do I have them? Because they make me feel good about myself, And it's true if you think about every one of us in here, we could be sitting here in gunny sacks and be perfectly covered, but we're not going to do that. So if the reason why we buy stuff is for emotional fulfillment of some kind, to feel better about ourselves, to get the respect of other people, to remove fear from our lives, to introduce excitement, like for seizing an opportunity, those are emotions. And nothing can capture emotion like video can. And one of the best ways to do that is with testimonials and case histories read by third-party voices that sound like the actual customers. So,
one question about that testimonial: if your spokesperson has, well, in my case, there's someone that would be considered a celebrity. He's publicly stated a testimonial about the, about the product, if you will, but getting him to say it, and you can't do a third-party person for him, like you can't do an actor. But if the spokesperson said, my friend had, so-and-so, as my friend so-and-so always says, da-da-da-da-da, and just kind of does the testimonial that way.
Anything that's out there is public domain, okay? I had a famous doctor, I forget who it was, the vitamin C guy, Linus Pauling. I had a famous doctor say something about oral chelation in an article he had written. And, of course, he had passed away at the time, unfortunately. But it's public domain. I mean, it's out there in the media. It's something he actually said. And I could cite a source for it. So I have I didn't even say my friend said. I have, this stuff works, Linus Pauling, It's just a big headline. It's perfectly fine. Also, when you're doing testimonials, just one other thing. The Federal Trade Commission rules say that you can edit that testimonial so long as you don't change the intent or the meaning. So as you're going through your clients' testimonials, these people cannot write English. They can't write probably any language. Okay? They're terrible. They misspell all their words. They'll really mess it up bad, and their wording will be all wrong, and maybe one will be all caps, and the other one will all have small caps beginning of sentences, and it's just total disaster. So you can go in there, and you can just, what was this person saying, and you can completely rewrite that testimonial, okay? And then, so long as you don't change the original intent, and the legal beagles will,